Hello and welcome to another exciting podcast of Access Granted, where we talk about recent trends in identity and access security, especially with the recent breaches that are happening and the need for various enterprises to simplify, operationalize, and make sure that they are compliant with all the different law of the land and regulations. We bring a lot of experts from customers, from partners, from industry experts to come and present their learnings, their case studies, share the reviews, and then that becomes a source of modern information, specifically cloud-first enterprises who are moving to the cloud and moving towards this new multi-cloud hybrid architecture. There's a lot of learning to begin. So whether you are a student, whether you are a professional, whether you're a business owner, whether you're a decision maker, there's always something in it for you in this podcast. So with that, I would love to introduce two of my guests here today. One is actually a guest and one, John, is a hybrid for me today. But Roy Long is a CEO of Sky Purple, also a chief evangelist, chief technologist, love technology, love to be always up to date with latest trend. So I would like to introduce Roy. Roy, you want to introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm the founder of Sky Purple Cloud. I've basically lived technology for most of my life in the life sciences sector for the last 30 years, and specifically kind of all in on cloud for the last 7 or 8 years. I've got various cloud security accreditations, including CCSP, AWS Security Specialty, also Aviatrix Multi-Cloud ACE Security Certification, also a AWS Professional Cloud Architect, as well as also a Google Certified Professional Architect as well. More recently, I've been working on ML and AI certs, moving with the market, including both AWS and Google ML AI certs. Recently, having passed the AWS AI Practitioner, which is like on early release at the moment. Sky Purple Cloud is kind of a boutique cloud consultancy. We have a focus on cloud networking and security, also cost optimization and AI and ML and data analytics workflows and solutions. And that's specifically targeted around the life sciences industry. We're also an AWS partner and a Google partner as well.
That's fantastic. You're a modern day guru, Roy. So
I try to be.
hard to keep up with all these technologies which are moving at bullet train pace to us. But it's great to hear. And I also want to welcome John. John is a co-host and also a contributor. He's a field CTO at Bradef. Very long experience at within the identity and access space, and very credible in the industry. So welcome, John.
Thanks, Nauman, and good to be chatting with you, Roy. Looking forward to this conversation. It's always good to have some subject matter experts like yourself here ready to discuss. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, excellent. Great to meet you.
Fantastic. So today, focus, Roy and John, right, is we wanted to focus on the life sciences industry specifically. And we wanted to talk about, there's a lot of, research work, there's, pharmaceutical research work, drug discovery, biotech research, a lot happening, especially after the COVID days. There's a huge amount of interest in terms of developing that market. And obviously, when you have that emphasis and focus, there's always, threats and cybersecurity concerns. Life sciences being a regulated industry, by default, because of all the sensitivity of data, there's an extra, focus on in terms of simplifying the security, operationalizing it, and obviously meeting compliance guidelines. So my first question, Roy, for you is, what has changed in the recent couple of years in terms of life sciences industry? What is top of mind for the CIOs and CEOs? And how is basically they're balancing innovation with all these different security requirements that they have to comply by?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. It's a really current challenge, especially like you mentioned around the COVID and the COVID pandemic, because we worked on a lot of systems, specifically one around working with the MHRA during the actual COVID and during the vaccination rollout. So we were kind of front and center, my team, with developing solutions around supporting the vaccination rollouts and understanding the importance of all the regulatory compliance, protecting both the data and the research data from the pharmaceutical industry themselves, as well as patient information, which is probably the most important piece of that is the patient information, not just the companies that are protecting their IP and their data, but obviously patient information is centermost in that protection. What have we seen with changes? We've seen like a rapid adoption of cloud and cloud technologies. The pandemic and everybody working from home really pushed that. And lucky for me, I've been all in on cloud for the last 7 or 8 years. And I was right there, thankfully, just as this whole thing ramped up. So I was like 3 or 4 years in already by the time the pandemic hit and everybody then went remote working. A lot of companies, including pharmaceutical companies, who are usually last of the game with things like cloud because they're really hot on the security and compliance and regulatory stuff. But even they started to kind of shift their attitude and their move to the cloud. We saw a major shift from on-premises to kind of both hybrid and all in on cloud, like cloud native developed applications. Direct integration of IAM and identity solutions with cloud services. Cloud controls around all the applications in the cloud, around the cloud services being used. But obviously that added an extra challenge for the internal security teams who weren't aligned with that cloud adoption and weren't aligned with that cloud strategy. And their view of the security was obscured by, the development teams and some of the clinical teams spinning stuff up in the cloud. And they didn't have that full visibility across the cloud.
Wow, right. Yeah, I wanted to just double down on that real quick because that is a very common thing, right? And this was a force that couldn't be, changed. I think if it wasn't for something like COVID, I believe a lot of these companies would have still been apprehensive. That's open for debate. We won't call them out. But since they were in it, do you feel like a lot of the teams, and you nailed it, when they tried to go to the cloud, everybody's going to first say, let's retrofit. Let's use what we have on premise and use it in the cloud. And then they start to realize, I don't think everything's quite the same. Or was the experience different? Can you talk to that a little bit, what it was like?
I think it was even more stark than that, right? Because you've got the whole concept of shadow IT, right? You had teams working from home and thinking, hey, I can build this on the cloud. And then the security teams were playing catch up. People were spinning up cloud environments and cloud accounts and doing stuff. And obviously the people developing and building those tools didn't necessarily have the security and the regulatory challenges top of most of their mind. They just wanted to get the job done, right? So then the security teams were like, hang on, how come we've got loads of data moving to this cloud environment here? And they've got the visibility on the on-prem stuff suddenly moving out of the data center. Where's all this data going to? And so they had to really quickly jump on that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Roy. So let me ask you this: so in terms of, you mentioned that now life sciences industries have adopted and have come to terms with moving or migrating their workloads to the cloud. Some may still always be multi-cloud hybrid, right? So they might be hybrid environment because there are things that they don't want to or they cannot move to the cloud. And now with this recent trend of moving some of the stuff back is also becoming a lot more popular. I know that a lot of industry leaders, the legacy industry leaders also would love to have private cloud be more prominent again, right? So they can sell their hardware. But regardless, there might be good reasons. There might be personal reasons for people to focus on that. But one thing is for sure that the way cloud has given this whole PaaS and SaaS experience where people can spin up things very quickly and translate their vision into reality very, very quickly is not something just a private data center, no matter how good you make it, could deliver. Right? So a multi-cloud hybrid is definitely a way to go. But my question is this. Normally in traditional security, we focus we do a lot of focus on parameter security, network security, segmentation, right, firewalling. But we have seen in the recent breaches, right, with MGM and Merck, GE Health, this Pfizer, right, the COVID vaccine company. Threat actors are targeting credentials, right? So because early on we used to see that they used to target software vulnerability, right? But now with modern techniques and people are getting better in writing code, you have AI that's helping them now. So that is going to become more and more difficult for them to find vulnerability within the software. But easier target for them is a human, right, or even a non-human,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we are seeing all these credentials that they're stealing credentials, and once you are logged in and you are overprivileged or you are privileged to move around, you're done. That it can bring the entire organization to your knees, to their needs. And I think in life sciences, do they have this realization that there has to be a focus on identity and access? There has to be a focus on defense in depth, where you're not just relying on credentials. Say something about that in terms of how people are maturing in that industry.
Yeah, so I'll just take it back a step to something else you mentioned as well. So around the transition to cloud, the move to private cloud, some moving it back. I think that's a bit of an anomaly at the moment. I think still more people are moving into the cloud, and I think AWS announced a reInvent last year that I think Pfizer now runs something like 70% of their internal compute workloads in the cloud. So everybody, I mean, there may be the odd anomaly going back to either on-prem, but that's usually a cost-based decision. That's usually they suddenly find they're spending way too much in the cloud. And that's one of the other areas we work quite closely on. We build our own tools around kind of FinOps and cost optimization. We work really closely with life sciences on that cost optimization piece. But kind of back to the security, you're absolutely right. The weak point is the person, right?
I agree.
The solutions we architect for pharmaceutical companies directly, a couple of the big, top tier pharmas that we actually work with a partner on a SaaS solution for, we secure the edge of it completely. We don't have any internet-based access into that account, right? Everything between the application and the pharmaceutical client customer goes from the cloud to their data center to their users. So they control that whole piece of user access into the cloud, and we just secure everything. So we have no kind of weak points, actually, unless there's a weak point in AWS cloud itself. We have no weak points in the application architecture we have, right? So the weak point is the person. If you get hold of their credentials, you've got access to everything. So how can you fix that? You have layered security, you have zero trust architecture, you have defense in depth, and you monitor, protect, and just audit and log everything. And then you kind of have not just the visibility, but you have the controls, and you're confident that you've got that whole piece secured, right from the layers.
I got a question for you on that, Roy, because this is beautiful. Like, thank you. Because when we engage with teams that are used to traditional PAM tooling, or, they're looking for CPAM, or they want to do something in the cloud, they're always focused on compliance. I just need to rotate passwords and audit. And when I have a conversation, I like to remind them of what you just said, though. There can be operational efficiencies also made from a financial perspective and cost savings if you use the cloud correctly. In the beginning, a lot of folks want to lift and shift their data center in the cloud and virtualize hardware. That's going to be real expensive and real hard to manage. If you use the cloud appropriately, not only can you do it more secure, you can actually improve operational efficiency and productivity. How do you kind of have that conversation with folks that are so used to, no, Roy, I just want to rotate passwords and lift and shift these servers,
I think it's a journey, right, for most customers. It's not something you can just go straight in and say, we just need to rebuild this and refactor it for you. I think it's a journey. You say, right, you look at what can be moved. AWS, Google, they have tools to help you have those conversations with customers. You do cost benefit analysis and moving to the cloud. How can you optimize what you've got in your on-prem data center to the cloud? And then once it's in the cloud, how can you then further optimize that by refactoring to like serverless, utilizing new technologies? We've just recently saved one of our customers about 50% on their compute just by moving from some of the kind of the x86 based architecture to the new Graviton ARM based architecture on AWS. The performance is better. The cost is half the price. It's just a no-brainer. And when you have those conversations and you give those examples, it makes that conversation a whole lot easier. And like I say, it's a journey.
Yeah. And I think that's where I think a lot of focus now even from cloud providers is on modernization and not just migration. Because once you modernize and you are up to date with the cloud native architecture and application design for the cloud, you start to then realize that cost savings and operational efficiency, simplicity, all of that comes true. Um, uh, so one question I have, John, for you, and then I want Roy to validate, right? So let's say if I am a life sciences, pharmaceutical, healthcare, cloud infrastructure leader, cybersecurity leader, and I'm hearing this. Okay, I should not just be relying on credentials and password. I have my Oktas of the world, ping identity of the world, Entra ID of the world. I'm doing my SSO. I'm doing my MFA, right? But you are saying that don't rely on credentials. Give me an actionable advice. What should I be implementing to simplify, operationalize the management across different environments? Because I do have on-prem, I may have multiple clouds. I don't want to have a fragmented approach of managing identity, access, and security, and I want to meet my compliance. So give me an actionable advice on what could it be, and I want Roy to also then validate that.
Yep. So I think Roy kind of nailed it, right? And I'm going to pick on AWS because it's easiest. And when someone, a leader, a technology leader in an organization realizes the financial incentives to move to the cloud and transform what they were doing, they start to hear these terms, and Roy just said it less than 5 minutes ago, things like serverless. They should be asking, well, what does that mean? In AWS, the concept of serverless when it comes to identity can be granted access to the things that need access to these resources using a new tech or a new way of doing it called role assumption. What role assumption can effectively do is get rid of username and password, right? You are granted session secrets just in time. That's an AWS term, but it's understanding that if you're shifting and transforming the underlying, infrastructure itself, the identity aspect of it can actually keep pace. So what you want to do is, work with a company or an organization or a solution, a tool that understands this concept. So in that case, if we transformed our entire ecosystem to AWS, we're using this new ARM technology, right? How do we match pace with identity? Well, let's stop thinking about just credentials and start thinking about something like AWS role assumption. Okay, we understand that can grant access to resources. How do we do that securely? We need a tool that can keep pace with what we're trying to do, something like a CPAM that was built in the cloud and built on AWS. So my point is, stop thinking, if you're transforming everything else, don't leave identity behind. Bring identity along with you and engage with partners and solutions that understand what you're saying and understand these new environments. Unify that where you can, right? Understand the IAM constructs of each of these cloud services and standardize that. It is not too much of a leap to do it. Anybody trying to retrofit and telling you I'm going to put a proxy in place, I'm going to tell you they probably don't got it figured out. But anybody who's saying they're driving by APIs, now I'm leaning in.
Yeah, that's a good distinguishing point. Roy, do you agree? What's your take on that?
Yeah, so the last 5 or 6 years, we've seen a huge transition away from IAM identities as kind of the access and the permissions based, like the use of permission based access using IAM and access keys within the environments. We've seen a huge problem back probably about 5-6 years ago of people actually including access keys in their code. In fact, AWS took the step of scanning all GitHub and open repositories for access keys and shutting those keys down automatically as soon as they find them. So there's been a huge shift away from that now. People are getting the message. They're moving to this role-based access, assuming roles when you need it, temporary credentials, which are assumed by that role. So instead of having somebody that acts as a system or a server, you have a service within AWS. Let's use AWS as the example because we've been talking about that. So we have AWS that has a service that has that role assumption capability. It assumes that role, gets those temporary credentials, runs what it needs to run, and then those credentials go away. So that's been a huge move in the industry.
That's great. So Roy, let me ask you this. So how do you go about, so let's say you have this knowledge now, right? You have this, modern approach of improving security. I call that zero trust authorization, becomes part of a zero trust security umbrella. But when you are working with life sciences customers, obviously there are different teams. Sometimes it's a consolidated cloud team that makes life easier because then you have a central point of control. But then you may also have fragmented teams, right? So how do you go about advising people in those life sciences or pharmaceutical industry in terms of how they should go about adopting a new dimension to the whole security? Because it might be a resistance because people are humans, don't like change, and they want to be in their comfort zone. They don't want to realize or accept that there's a pain, right? Until they see a tool that can solve it, they say, okay, oh yeah, I had this problem. I don't know why I haven't fixed it before. So all this human dynamics comes into play. What has been your approach that works well for these life sciences customers?
Yeah, change management, right? Change management is a big issue, right? Nobody like. Well, I actually do like change, but not a lot of people like change, right? So I think when you have those conversations, so I think let's separate out, because I think some of it is dependent on the size of the company, right? Some of the big players like your Pfizer's, like your Bayer's, like your Moderna's, they've kind of got a lot of this sus now. They have central security teams now, who not only manage the on-prem stuff, but they all manage the cloud stuff. It's all incorporated under the same umbrella. That took them some time to get there. It took them some time to get that message, and kind of a lot of the time the security guys were like, we're not touching cloud, we can't secure it, right? Then all of a sudden, right, actually we can secure it. There are these tools and these resources within the cloud providers and then third-party tools. We can actually get a good understanding. We can even integrate it with some of our existing tool sets, right? And so those larger companies are kind of getting the message and put it all under a single umbrella. The smaller companies is a challenge for them, and the way we approach that is normally they don't have any understanding of their security posture at all. So we have some tools I work with. So we're an Orca security partner. We do cloud security posture management as well. And we're just talking to another company called Rotate, who do like all of the SSO and the identity-based scanning of credential. Like, and if there's any breach on identities and things like that, they'll report those in. So we're working with companies like that to go into these smaller biotechs and smaller research organizations and say, look, here's a picture of what we can just find from the outside, right? This is what you're exposing already. Let's talk about how we can help you do something about that.
Fantastic. No, I think that's a great advice. And I think it's great to hear from you that all these bigger pharmaceutical organizations have already started to have the central, I would say, center of excellence where decisions are made and then it gets spread across the rest of the organization. I was talking to a friend at Apple. They have the similar governance model there, which works really well because you have one team with like-minded people aligned to the mission vision of the C-levels. They evaluate the technology. They work with the business units to figure out what their needs are, and then basically they help them adopt from a centralized way. That's great. Now let's move a little bit more on everybody is talking about AI these days, right? So, and I'm sure that AI has a big role to play in life sciences, researches, drug discovery. And in a way, I always think about life sciences. It's like, they're saying, right, that if you are if you are a doctor, a good doctor, you might just focus on the disease. But if you're a great doctor, you are focused on the person with the disease, right? So it's a holistic approach of telemedicine and life sciences and research work that needs to happen. And the way the AI, the role that can be played in terms of a lot of this research and making things faster for these data scientists and researchers, I think can be monumental. So I wanted to get your thoughts in terms of how AI is changing the way life sciences industry is progressing and developing, and how do you feel that in terms of securing all these different data that now is in the part of these use cases, it becomes more important.
Yeah, I mean that's it's been a massive shift, a massive sea change since the Meta Llama model was released, right? Inadvertently released into the public, whether that was intentional or not, right? But as soon as that technology became available, it had a massive change with what was possible. There's and we build AI and ML data analytics pipelines for some of our customers as well in biotech industry, and so everybody wants a piece of the action right now. Everybody wants to know how AI can help them, optimize, enhance, expedite their kind of research and their business. And those that aren't looking at it are going to get left behind. There's no doubt about it, no question. Those companies that aren't looking at AI are going to get left behind. So that has a huge challenge around, right, we're going to use AI. How do we secure our data in the AI environments? We're using an LLM model. We might even have users using ChatGPT, right? They might be putting our latest structures into ChatGPT and giving all of that away, right? What they don't realize is everything that goes into ChatGPT, unless you've got those guardrails around that data, is going to be used for future training. So somebody else may well get your compound, get your molecular structure because it's come up in a training set, right? So you need a secure environment to actually do that work in. And AWS again, Google as well, they give you these custom ML, LLM tools to actually be able to utilize all the powerful technologies, utilize all the latest models from all the latest providers, and have the guardrails and security around that. So none of your data gets shared. Everything stays within your perimeter. And then and the next step there is, which we haven't got a really good answer for right now, is the tools to monitor and understand what the users are doing, how that data is even being stored within our own perimeter. We know it's being secured there, but how, why, and what is being secured there? That we don't get great visibility on that right now.
So Roy, at least to double tap on that, you're saying we know it's happening. We know it's going to happen. If you don't do it, you're wrong. I mean, for lack of a better term. But if you are going to use AI, ML, and all these different models and data sets, at least bare minimum, have one checkpoint, one check box that says, are we considering data protection and access? Then expanding on that. We know everyone's going to move fast, but at least include it. You feel like right now people are thinking about it, but not necessarily, I wouldn't say it's a top priority, right?
I think some of the bigger players have been doing this for a little while now. Like I say, like the top tier farmers and stuff. I think they'd probably err on the side of caution and would not use a tool unless they're absolutely sure then they're not giving any data away. Some of the smaller biotechs and research companies that just want to get in on the action, I think they've got to really look long and hard at what they're doing and if they're given any, or if they've already given their data away. Right?
Awesome, yeah.
How come my competitors got a product that's exactly the same as mine, right?
They just sold it yesterday too. It's on the market.
Yeah. But I think there's a interesting trend here. So there's definitely data privacy, data governance, data security is top of the mind for business leaders. I think what I also may be happening, the technology is so new that they just don't know how to actually address that because things are moving so fast in the AI world. The focus is on getting it done. So they have to basically fix the engine while it's already in flight. John, maybe you want to give an example of that customer that you were mentioning the other day where they have all these different database and they want to make sure that they secure access even from internal, right? So you have even from internal, it's not about external, it's from internal. Now you have consolidating data in one place. Let's say like a Zeno, right? Now you have a sales data, engineering data, research data, all of them get fed into this database and now everybody has access to that. And let's say if a support guy credentials gets compromised, now you are able to access everything in that thing, right? So there's this thought about how do I do a just-in-time. So there's this whole modern just-in-time. So John, maybe you want to chime in.
Yeah.
What is this modern just-in-time and what people are thinking about securing this?
Yeah, and just a quick anecdote before I get there. My wife last night, she's like, I downloaded this cool app, and she's like, would you like to know what you look like if you have long, pretty hair and I changed your eyebrows? And I'm like, you're just training the AI model with my face. You know that, right? So back to this point about businesses, they do that, right? And like, I'm not going to claim I'm an AI expert, but a lot of folks just conceptually, they know that if they train the data lake, right? They train their AI model on a data lake, it'll be smart. So why don't we give it the largest data lake we can, right? Let's just dump all the data sets we have into one lake and the AI will learn. Well, to your point, Nauman, inadvertently, there's a ton of data that probably shouldn't be in there, or it should be segmented, or it should be segregated. So it's all these new data sets, and you're giving access to everything where if you don't understand the structure, even if you looked at it as a directory, who can access these things? Not just the AI, but other people. To Nauman's point, I was hired as a help desk contractor, and inadvertently, now I have access to this giant lake of data that houses everything I need. It's just a dangerous situation, especially if you start plugging in things you don't understand, right? There are query engines we use internally. I'll pick on Microsoft like SharePoint. SharePoint will query and read from anything it can, and it'll present back to you anything it can, right? So the point there is we want to be able to at least understand access and manage it appropriately, whatever that may be. If it's not a consideration of what you're doing, you might be doing it wrong.
Perfectly articulated, John. So we are almost, I mean, this is a very exciting podcast, and, I'm loving the time, but I want to also make it short for people to just be able to consume this. So we are coming to towards the end, but Roy, I wanted to ask you that what are some of the lessons learned if you look at the recent cyber attacks that are happening? I mentioned some of them, but you may have your own. What is the lessons learned from them? And you being a practitioner and a consultant and a trusted advisor to your customers, what is that? I mean, how does that modern stack looks like, especially from a security and identity perspective, that you have seen, or you would recommend people to invest in? Like, is it maybe like a CNAP, like a Wiz or Orca, or IDP? Obviously, Okta and Ping, and one of them has to be there. But what does that stack look like, which you can call it as a minimal viable stack for a modern life sciences enterprise that they should look into adopting?
Yeah, I mean that's a really good question, and it's a challenge to answer some of that. However, what I will say, some of the AI stuff we talked about is also applicable to helping secure as well, right? It's not just about using AI to do the kind of business as usual. It's actually incorporating AI into the tools you're using to protect your environment. I think there's a lot of benefit to how we can utilize AI to optimize the security posture and understand what's going on without having to have a person to understand it. Train the AI model to look at everything you've got, look at your stack, look at your security stack, and understand exactly what's going on there. But I think if you configure the cloud environment properly, it can be a superior security posture from an on-prem environment. I truly believe that. I've got a great example of when I worked in a pharmaceutical company in the early days, and every Wednesday at 6 p.m. one of our servers would go down. And I was sat there one night, just in my office next to we had a small unlocked data center. It was just like a data room, right, with a few server stacks and stuff. And I just glanced over one Wednesday when I was late in the office, watched a cleaner trundle into the server room, unplug one of our servers and plug a Hoover in. Right? Now, you're not going to get that in the cloud. I was like, I could not believe what I was seeing, right? And that's a great example I use when people say, how can the cloud be more secure than on-prem? Right there. Right? You haven't got any users like interfering with your stuff. Right?
That is amazing. I'm going to borrow that story, Roy. I'm claiming that one.
Ask AI to beat that.
Yeah. So yeah, like I say, configure the cloud environment properly. It can give you much superior security, especially with sensitive healthcare data. Use the correct tools and the correct stack, just-in-time permissions and credentials, role-based access, properly monitor and manage your security posture with tools like Orca Security for the security posture management. Have proper logging and auditing and alerting. Have a proper instant response for it. Just make sure that you understand where your data is, how it's protected, and who has access to it all the time, especially in I mean, it's relevant across industries, but specifically around, healthcare, where you're playing with patient data and people's lives are at stake.
Yeah. John, anything you want to add to this recommendation for customer?
Yeah, no, just one more little tidbit I like to add is, with things moving to the cloud and we're losing the perimeter of on-premise because we don't want custodians unplugging it to get his KPIs driven. Identity is becoming the new perimeter in all reality. So controlling access, who can access what, even if it is an AI that is critical, mission critical, we still want to have some controls in place that enable, productivity, but let's do it securely. We don't know, security shouldn't be trying to slow anybody down. I want to speed everybody up with those guardrails. That should be a goal.
Fantastic. Roy, any last two key takeaways for the audience, specifically if they are in the life science industry? I also wanted to, maybe one of the key takeaway I want you to highlight is, if there's somebody, young professionals who wants to make a career in the life sciences, pharmaceutical, biotech industry, right? And especially with this whole AI and, AI writing the software and all of that, what would be your advice on which areas to invest in terms of making a good, rewarding career within the life science industry? Maybe that's one of the key takeaway, or anything else you want to share.
Absolutely. That last one's a really easy one to answer, right? I think you're going to know where I'm going with that, right? But I think key takeaways, unified approach to identity and access management. Make sure you have, like I said before, proper visibility and monitoring on your credentials, on your access. You know who's accessing what and when. I think the future is AI-driven adaptive security. Such a rapidly evolving threatscape, right? The threat landscape is all the bad actors are now using AI. If you're not using AI to protect yourself, you're going to be, like I said before, you're going to be behind the curve. If you're not using AI, other people are, especially the bad actors, right? They're going to use this technology and they're going to kind of compromise what you thought was safe. So skills and where to go and right, AI, right? AI is definitely the flavor of the moment, if not like the next decade, if not more, right? If anything you're going to do in the life science industry, understand the science, but understand how you can apply AI and ML to that science as well, because a lot of the research companies are going to be using, enhanced AI-driven pipelines for everything, right? From structural analysis, molecular modeling, crystallography, everything that's involved in life sciences and drug discovery and research, it's going to be AI driven.
That's great advice. Roy, if people wants to reach out to you, either for a career advice or from a consulting perspective, how can I improve my security posture, or in general from AWS, Azure, Orca, or whatever, right? So a variety of, consultation. Where can they reach out to you?
So our website is skypurple.cloud, really nice and easy. I'm on LinkedIn. Just look me up, Roy Long, Sky Purple Cloud, and also my email address, roy@skypurple.cloud.
Fantastic. Thank you, Roy. Thank you, John. Really good discussion. And I'm sure that our audience at Access Granted would love that. And I'm hoping for further interaction. We are all available on LinkedIn, or reach out to us directly. Would love to have a chat and make things better for you.
Thanks, Norman. Thanks, John.
Take care.